Hello there, thanks for joining us. Canada's immigration laws require some persons wanting to visit Canada temporarily as workers or students or visitors to complete medical exams. And the rules also require persons who are wanting to come to Canada as permanent residents to complete medical exams, to have their medicals done by an appointed medical practitioner. In this video, we'll be going through exactly what is required, why it's required, and how to go about getting your medical exams done. Do remember to hit the subscribe button and to check us out on our website at go.gooselaw.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back. My name is Donovan Francis, and I'm a Canadian immigration lawyer, and I help skilled workers who are already inside Canada or those who are outside Canada. I help them to become permanent residents without having to deal with all of the complicated immigration forms that are part of that process. Now, if you are looking to visit Canada as a worker temporarily, or you want to come as a student, or you want to just come on a part-time basis as a visitor, you may be required to conduct a medical examination, to have a doctor, a physician, appointed by the Canadian authorities, to have that physician carry out a medical examination on you before you're able to come to Canada. Similarly, if you're wanting to move to Canada permanently as a permanent resident, then you must undergo a medical examination before you are before your application is processed and you are allowed to come to Canada as a permanent resident. Now, this is necessary because Canada's immigration regulations spell this out. The regulations say that you are inadmissible, meaning you cannot be and will not be allowed into Canada on health grounds if you do not meet the conditions stipulated. And one of the conditions is that you must not be found to be a danger to public health within Canada. Similarly, you must not found to be a danger to public safety. Right? So somebody who potentially is a danger to public health is somebody who may have some serious types of infectious diseases that the Canadian government deems to be hazardous and dangerous to public health. Similarly, you must not suffer from an illness or a medical condition that would result in you putting excessive demand on Canada's healthcare system and or on Canada's social services systems. So that is the legal basis for the requirement that persons wanting to come into Canada must complete a medical if you're wanting to come as a permanent resident, and may be required to complete a medical if you're wanting to come to Canada as a visitor, a student, or a worker. Now, let's just quickly look at which temporary residents require a medical. All right. First and foremost, if you're coming to Canada to perform certain types of job, right? So certain types of jobs require you to get a medical done, and it makes sense that somebody who's coming to work in the health services, health sciences field, for instance, would require to get a medical done. No matter what. Similarly, somebody coming to work in a clinical lab, and so on and so forth. Teachers of primary schools, for instance, that's a requirement, or teachers of small children, that kind of a thing, day nursery employees, and so on and so forth. So you can find a listing of the jobs that require medical exams right off the bat from the government's website, the IRCC, Immigration and Refugee and Citizenship Canada's website. Also, if you are planning to come to Canada as a temporary resident, student, or visitor for more than 6 months, you must complete a medical unless you fit into one of the exemptions. So generally speaking, persons who are wanting to come to Canada for under 6 months do not require a medical, irrespective of what country they're coming from. Okay, but if you're planning to visit Canada for more than 6 months, then chances are you will require a medical unless you fit into one of the exemptions. And one of those exemptions is that there are countries whose citizens are not required to complete medicals if they're coming here temporarily. So, and again, this information is available on the government's website. And here you'll see a listing of, and it's a very extensive list. Well, this is a listing of all countries, and here it tells you which countries citizens are required to do medicals if they're coming to Canada as temporary residents for more than 6 months. So here you see like Afghanistan, yes. If we do a search for a country such as India, for instance, let's see, India. So yes, if you're coming from India, and you plan to be here for more than 6 months, then you will be required to do a medical examination. If we do a search for a country like Antigua and Barbuda, you see no medical examinations are required, and so forth and so on. So there you see. So the bottom line is that there are some exemptions, and you will need to go through the list to see which countries' residents do not require medicals if they're planning to be here as temporary residents, but for more than 6 months. All right. So that's generally speaking one of the exemptions. Okay. Persons from those countries are exempted from doing the medicals under certain conditions. Other than that, everybody else is required to do a medical examinations. And you're also going to be required to do a medical examination, irrespective of the country you're coming from, if you're applying under the parent and grandparent super visa program. All right, so that's a very specific program targeted at parents and grandparents. Applicants under that program are required to undergo a medical. Now, in terms of who can do your medical exams, now medical exams may be carried out by physicians, doctors, medical doctors who are designated by the Canadian government. These are referred to as panel physicians, and they're panel physicians pretty much in most countries. Oftentimes there are multiple panel physicians in different countries, and these are the appointed medical practitioners who can carry out medical examinations. If they're not on this list of panel physicians, then they are not authorized to carry out medicals on behalf of the Canadian immigration. That is acceptable to the Canadian immigration authorities, and therefore you should not be using any physician who is not on that list. Okay, so in terms of when to go for your medical exams, if you're applying or you plan to apply, you have the option of doing what's called an upfront medical. So this is where you go and you get the medical done even before you filed your application. So that's one option. Where that is done, then the doctor will provide the e-medical report to the Canadian immigration authorities directly. So there will be a role there for you. Alternatively, you have the option of not doing an upfront medical and waiting until you have filed your application, following which the immigration authorities will provide you with a letter and instructing you on the need to get this medical done, and then you can do it after the fact. So again, you have the option of doing it upfront, or you have the option of doing it after the fact. When you go to see the physician, you're required to take proper ID, and we're talking about government issued ID. If you have eyeglasses or contact lenses, you need to take those with you as well. Any medications you're taking, that kind of a thing. And if you're not doing an upfront medical, then you will be sent a medical report form, right, by the Canadian immigration authorities after you file your application. And you'll be required to take that form with you. But again, this would only be necessary if you're not doing an upfront medical. recent photographs is also going to be necessary if, right, and only if the panel physician does not use e-medical. So e-medical is an online system that allows for the information to be shared with the Canadian authorities relatively quickly. Payments for your fees are made directly to the medical practitioner who is carrying out the exams. And you can find out details on kind of what to expect during the exam. It's a pretty in-depth examination of your health situation. So, of course, there'll be questionnaires that you're going to need to complete. And there are some of the standard tests and checks that your doctor would do when you do your regular visit. It's not going to be very different in that sense. However, there's always the possibility that you may be asked to undergo other tests, depending on things like your age, or depending on whether or not some of the doctor's findings are inconclusive in the initial assessment. The doctor may want you to do an additional X-ray or get a lab test done, that kind of a thing. And of course, you have the right to take somebody along with you to act as a chaperone in the event you think it necessary. After the exam is done, again, the physician is the one who sends the results to the immigration authorities. Okay, and if you do an upfront medical, you need to keep whether you do an upfront medical or not, you need to keep a copy of the printout that the panel physician would have given you. You want to have some kind of proof that you have in fact done this upfront medical in the event something were to go awry. And of course, there's a complaint mechanism in the event you're dissatisfied with the work that the physician has done. Very importantly, it's important for you to note that the medical exam is good for 12 months. So it's valid for 12 months, but if 12 months have passed and you've not submitted your Canadian application, whether it be a temporary resident application or permanent resident application, then it is likely, then you will be required to complete a new medical. And so there you have it, an in-depth discussion and explanation of the Canadian requirement that you undergo a medical examination. I trust you found this useful. And as always, do remember to hit the subscribe button and to check us out on our website at go.gooselaw.com.